The side event is organized by the Permanent Mission of the Russian Federation, by the Institute of Democracy and Cooperation in Paris, and by the Imperial Orthodox Palestine Society in Moscow. It's the fourth time we've organized a side event on Syria here at the Palais des Nations. Last year, again with the Russian Federation, we were honored to have the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and the Foreign Ministers of Armenia and Lebanon to discuss the plight of Christians in the Middle East. The previous year, we were honored by the presence of the High Commissioner Navi Pillai. This year, with the conflict, of course, still continuing in Syria, we have decided to try to cast light on a particular aspect, or on two particular aspects of the conflict: the role of and the experiences of women and of religious minorities. And it's with great pleasure that we have brought, again as in previous years, four very distinguished Syrian guests who will give you their perspective and their testimony of how they have lived through the conflict that has now lasted for so long.
The situation in Syria is becoming more and more perilous. The Middle East, Syria, also Libya, Iraq, Yemen has fallen into the abyss of unprecedented cruelty. Today it is clear that the international community has to stand united in eradicating the menace of terrorism that comes from the groups like ISIS or Jabhat al-Nusra, and that continue to be the major threat to human rights in the region. Syria is bleeding. Terrorists from ISIS, Nusra, and affiliated groups continue accumulating resources and manpower, turning large parts of the country into enclaves of brutal sectarianism. Those who don't share their bigoted dogma are massacred. Dozens were brutally killed in Kalbloza on the 10th of June 2015, in Hatla on 11 June 2013, in Akrab on 11 December 2012. The latest mass atrocities were committed in May 2016 in an Alawai village of Al-Zara, where dozens of civilians were killed by Jabhat al-Nusra and affiliated groups who came from Rastan. As we speak, the jihadists are using terrorist methods to try to eradicate Syria's rich religious heritage. The unique cultural and religious fabric of the country that has been woven over centuries is being torn apart by jihadists who deprive the whole community's basic rights.
I appreciate very much your willingness to respond to our invitation and to express your feelings and not being indifferent to what is going on in Syria. I believe personally that Syria, what has happened to Syria, is a shame to the humanity. People tend to remember only that Syria once was center of Islamic, Arab Caliphate. But Syria, at the moment Rome was founded, Syria was much older than Rome is today. So it's a cradle of civilization. And as having territory so diverse, having fertile plains, high mountains and deserts, it has been always good home to diverse ethnic, religious groups, including Kurds, Armenians, Assyrians, Christians, Druze, Alawite, Shia, and Arab Sunnis. And they could live there in peace. And that corresponded much better to the modern postulates of democracy and equality than what is professed now by the opponents of Syrian government, disregarding the fact that the Syrian army is the only organized and well-governed force to fight the biggest and the most monstrous enemy of the mankind, the Daesh. Our institute, together with our good partner, the Imperial Orthodox Palestine Society, has organized already several events here. And our institute has begun to draw the communities and the public opinion to what is going on in Syria much earlier. We have held an event in our premises in Paris where we invited people from Syria and also correspondents who brought monstrous videos and facts and photographs, but nobody wanted to listen to this, and it's only the rise of al-Nusra and Daesh showing its monstrous face to mankind with mass beheading and killings of all opponents that led somehow a little bit to cool the international support to so-called opposition and to so-called moderate opposition. As a historian who had even books on the international relations before Second World War, I find a lot of similarities in the pre-war immediate time and today's, in what has happened in international relations during the past 3 years. As we all know now, that at the time Hitler pest was already crouching around Europe, endangering the whole civilization. The parties involved in the international relations were trying to wait until the situation brings them more political gain than to the partner. The result we know. The same we have been warning for as an NGO for several years has been happening during the past several years, and it's only in this year and His Excellency the Ambassador Borodavkin has mentioned that some positive steps were taken. So now what can NGO do in such situation, because diplomats do their job, we do ours. We always try to bring people, real witnesses from the province and the depths of Syria, so that they share with the audience, with their experience, sometimes so sad that you cannot but cry. We have brought witnesses before, and I must tell you that one of our guests, the Sheikh, who participated 3 years ago in our event, was eventually killed, already perished. Now we brought again several witnesses who will tell you about their experience. So this is the data you can't read in the newspapers. This media tends still to hide what is going on, and the media is very biased still, despite some little positive changes. We put as a subtitle also the plight of women, because Russian women know what it is to become a widow in a devastated land while around you are only widows, and you can't even get compassion because everyone is in such disastrous situation. That was after the war. And my personal family, my grandmother and mother, who was a heroic partisan resistance part, they told me real stories about it. Women in Syria now face tremendous problems, so we must help them, and not in the way feminists usually hold their seminars on equality, etc., professing free love, etc., etc., which is so irrelevant to the reality, especially in Syria and other civilizations. We must be tactful, not interfere into their civilizational tradition, but we must just help women to find their place in the society, to feel needed by the country, by the society, to find jobs, to be more with their children, etc., etc. I think that is the task of humanity and of those people who are not indifferent to what is going on around you, especially now when the plight of Christianity in the Middle East is practically directly dependent on how we fight Daesh, the worst enemy of the mankind, and not only of Christians but also of Muslims. So I welcome you all, and I hope that our seminar today, our side event, especially with the presence of high-ranking diplomats, will contribute to our better knowledge and will stimulate the real effort in this direction. Thank you very much.
I am representing the Imperial Orthodox Palestine Society, the oldest non-governmental organization in Russia, having a consultative status with UN Economical and Social Council. For more than 1,034 years, our society has been historically involved in humanitarian missions, strengthening of friendship ties with countries and people of the Middle East and the Holy Land, the land of three Abraham religions. The IOPS, our organization, has a deep roots in the region. The chairman of IOPS is a famous Russian state and public figure, Sergei Stepashin, a man of respect who has personal contacts with many head of states of the Middle Eastern countries. Today, many countries have realized Daesh and the attempt of terrorists to create a global caliphate. This is a systemic challenge to the world order and a serious threat to the world security. Recently, I had a chance to be in Syria, Lebanon, and as well as Iraqi Kurdistan, and I have a moral right to be a witness to these dramatic events. Nothing left in the holy places where the Daesh terrorists have stepped in. Churches are either desecrated or completely destroyed. We are witnessing the systematic and international removal of Christian region civilization code, and international terrorist forces aim to fully destroy Christianity, its great history, churches, cultural heritage, great and ancient Palmyra, for example, ancient manuscripts, etc. Every day the world gets the new evidence of barbaric brutality of Daesh terrorist cities and villages with blood. We appeal to political leaders, internationally well-known public and religious figures, to take decisive actions to stop the war, to stop tremendous burst of radical Islam, which is currently trying to establish jihadist dictatorship and threatens the whole world almost with apocalypse, to stop the new barbarians. Today in Syria, a fragile truce. To be true, thanks to the support of Russia, Russian military space forces, the main thing to curb terrorists, to expand humanitarian access, to begin a political settlement process without any strange shape and a fake character. We should stand for united force to oppose extremism and terrorism as a whole world, by all countries, without political agenda, without double policy standards and immediate geopolitical deals of one country, on the basis of international law.
For Russian Orthodox people, Syria is close to our hearts, because Syria is the place where one of the first Christian communities emerged in the first century, and where the very name Christians was first applied to the followers of Christ. Christians are not a mere minority, but inseparable part of native population of Syria. present there for 20 centuries. The scale of the catastrophe passed over in silence by the majority of the world media has yet to be realized. The Moscow Patriarchate, which has traditionally enjoyed close spiritual and social links with the Middle East, places a priority on this aspect of its external relations. In many countries of the Middle East and North Africa, the whole families, villages, and cities of our brothers and sisters in Christ are being completely exterminated. The churches are being barbarously ravaged and looted, the sacred objects profaned, the monuments destroyed. It is with pain that we call to mind the situation in Syria, Iraq, and other countries of the Middle East, and the massive exodus of Christians from the land in which our faith first disseminated and in which they have lived since the time of apostles, together with other religious communities.
As one of Syrian society wants to shout and react against this flagrant violation of our rights, and to be in a legal platform to freely express in the name of all Syrians, I got success and came into the parliament in 2012 as a Syrian independent woman, not related to any party and not been in politics before, holding my responsibility as a Syrian citizen, taking my role as a woman also, and from Christian religion related to the richness tissue of Syrian society to say to foreign states, we, the Syrian people, don't want any state to speak in our name. We have the right to decide and choose our destiny. In the name of freedom and freedom of expression, all official relations with the Syrian state has been interrupted, and all communications with Syrian society inside Syria has been blocked. And the Occident media pass only their opposition voice and exclude the real one, distorting realities and facts. Since 2012, as a parliamentarian representative of Syrian people, my aim was to present on international level, to reflect the reality and pass the voice of Syrian people to the outside world using the parliamentarian diplomacy as an alternative. On 2012-2013, we surprised as they blocked our visa as a Syrian parliamentarian delegation for the first time to Italy from Foreign Minister Terzi, and second time illegally from Canadian government, the state of democracy and human rights, as a Syrian parliamentarian delegation to the IPU, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, and that was a flagrant violation of the international law and the rules of IPU member states. We sent a letter to Italian and Canadian Parliament and Senate, but no answer. Also, we tried to react against the lie of media, so I worked hard to build an international network of journalists to cover all realities and to provide them with net resources, and we did a lot to change the public opinion in Europe and West in general during these 4 years.
عنوان كلمتي القصة التي لم تروى عن الحرب في سوريا. السادة الحضور، ربما سيفاجئكم ما ستسمعونه مني، لأنه سيكون مختلفاً عما اعتدتم على سماعه على مر سنوات الحرب ال5 في سوريا، والتي كنتم تسمعون فيها من طرف واحد قصة واحدة. ذلك الشاب الذي كان يضج بالحياة، والذي كنت أعد الأيام لتخرجه من الجامعة وأحلم برؤيته مهندساً عظيماً أفخر به، كان مفجعاً أن يموت ليس في ساحة القتال بل في قاعة الامتحان وبيده القلم والأوراق وليس بندقية أو مدفعاً. كان صادماً أن يكون القاتل زميله في الجامعة، وصادماً أكثر أن يكون القتل بسبب الاختلاف في الرأي السياسي، فقد كان خضر ورفاقه أعضاء في المنظمة الطلابية في الجامعة وكانوا مؤيدين للرئيس والحكومة، بينما كان القاتل ينتمي إلى ما يسمى المعارض.
From nearly 6 years, Syrian people is living on the rhythm of terrorism and the human life violation. In fact, before 2011, Syria was the 5th country in the world in security and inter-community social life and respect. In Syria, all of us are Syrian first, and then Christian, Muslim, Jew, or other. Religion, confession, or ethnical origins was something very personal, but also very much respected and considered with a lot of positive feeling concerning our origins. Women and children were essentially targeted in this destructive and dirty war. The terrorists coming from 130 countries pretending apply a Sharia created for this purpose, which has nothing to do with Islam, but in coordination with the Wahhabi Saudi ideology. It is important to note that the Saudi ruling family is the great instrument of this aggression, ideologically by the Wahhabism, financially by corrupting people, governors, employees, and even some deciders in Syria and other countries. Financially, Turkey supports Daesh, al-Nusra, and many terrorist groups acting in Syria directly or indirectly by buying Syrian or Iraqi rubbed oil, cereals, and archaeological artifacts. The UN and the so-called international community continue to deal with the countries who are supporting terrorism, and impose sanctions against countries and organizations who are really fighting terrorism, such as Syria, Russia, and Hezbollah. Daesh invented a so-called Sharia rules, which have been put in a book, Rules of Conduct, and a staff of guardian, Hisbat, men and women coming mostly freshly converted from Europe. Al-Khansa Brigade for Women Control are mostly foreigners from USA, Britain, France, married to men from Daesh. If they refuse, the father is punished by flogging, lashes in public. Sometimes more, girls are raped in front of their families and very badly hit. The recommended age of marriage, according to Daesh rules of conduct, is between 9 and 16 years. When the families or the girls refuse, they are beaten and put in jail, where they are mistreated, violated, and submitted to all extreme sex perversion. So a big numbers of girls and women are committing suicide.
I thank our host for their effort to shed the light on the Syrian conflict. I am not Syrian. I live in Syria since 1996, where I restored a 5th century monastery in Kara Kalamoun, 90 kilometers north of Damascus. We are a community of 20 persons with 9 nationalities. All of us, we did not leave Syria in solidarity with the Syrian people. When the conflict began, we stood with the Syrian population without any discrimination of religion, ethnicity, or political affinity. Nevertheless, we had to face very quickly massive and invasive biased media propaganda, false flags, and I regret it to say it here, for the 4th year, unlawful, unbalanced reports from the Commission of Inquiry on human rights violations in Syria. While believing in the freedom of expression so much praised by the West, I have experienced a real pressure and blackmail to prevent me to inform, when requested, the public opinion about what was really going on. Also, in a flagrant violation of a human rights charter, many satellite stations were propagating the most fundamentalistic ideologies in Arabic, calling for sectarian violence and religious takfir, anathema, including inciting to kill the non-Muslim or non-Arabic segment of the Syrian society, like Alawite, Yazidite, Murshidite, Druze, Ismailite, Christian, Shia, Sabians, Kurd, Caucasian, Armenian, or Assyrian. We experienced how media propaganda can demonize the victims and sanctify the aggressor. I also experienced the criminal art of igniting fire and faking to extinguish it. In the middle of all these facts, we experience a real consolation. The Syrian people in its majority did not abide to the dissemination of chaos. Luminous examples of unity, solidarity, forgiveness, and compassion are highly praised values to be followed by our world. Isn't it a sad reality that countries maintain a blockade on Syria, preventing a dignified life from the Syrian population, while they buy oil and other commodities from ISIS and terrorist group? Our experience is that with a little bit of trust and goodwill, this crisis can be reversed and native people can go back to their own country. About Aleppo, I am just coming back from Aleppo. It is sad to see that in the last report, the Commission of Inquiry, the report of February 2016, the Commission of Inquiry ignores that 1.5 million of civilians in Aleppo are facing daily bombing from so-called moderate rebel groups. The Syrian Arab Army, who is protecting the civilians, cannot try to silence those aggressions because the medias and the government will pretend that this army is aggressing its own people. This means that political interest and pressure can hinder the perception of the reality and the transmission of facts. This tolerance and compromising with evil will have a terrible reversion in the environment itself of those chaos engineers. We are seeing already the spread of terror in Europe and in United States. And to conclude, I say, if we are still here, what hope for a better world? Thank you.